Good morning. This is Jim Whitehead of All Power Group, Phoenix Animal. And today, I've been doing a series in the last couple episodes that highlights different animal rescue facilities, locations around the world. The last one I did about a week or so ago was one of the oldest animal rescue communities, and that was in Great Britain. What we're doing today, and again, some of where these locations are, it admittedly surprises one where you'd say, well, this location, you might say, I'm surprised, but pleasantly surprised. So what we're talking about today is the sanctuary of the Whispering Palms in Bali. And as you can see from the first illustration, this is not a caged animal situation. And as I've said so many times in my presentations, how much I love animals. And they should be treated in the best way possible all the time. I have my little Jamie. She's almost 11-year-old Shih Tzu. And boy, I'll tell you, you just love them because they love you and they're there for you, and you're the most important person in their life. So anyway, the sanctuary of Whispering Palms, it is located just outside of Ubud, Bali. If you walked down the narrow dirt road before sunrise, when the sky was still lavender and gold, you'd hear it long before you saw this location. The soft chatter of maracus greeting the morning, the low rumble of rescued street dogs stretching awake, and the flutter of bright-winged parrots. And hopefully you saw that, shifting in their branches. This was the sanctuary of Whispering Palms, a place many travelers found by accident, but never forgot. Now, again, you see the environment that they're in. It's a wonderful location. And I know you'd say, well, do dogs and cats and birds and so on and so forth, do they desire to have a great view? I bet you they do. Because, it's kind of makes it peaceful for people. I mean, if let's say you had a facility in the middle of a city street, on a city street, and even if it was in the back, there'd be so much unfamiliar noise, sometimes banging, shots, whatever. But when you look at this environment, you know that the animals are saying, this is the best place for me to be. The sanctuary sat on a hill above a rice terrace, which you can see, surrounded by palm trees that really did whisper when the warm breeze swept through. It wasn't just an animal shelter. It was a place where broken stories were gently put back together. Because, I pray every night. I've said this probably 71 times. that I pray every night for all the animals. And I also pray for all the people too. So don't think I'm, how would you say, not sensitive to the human-like issue. But animals have a wonderful spirit, a kind-hearted soul, and all they want to do is be loved, and so on and so forth. And you see when they go to a sanctuary that isn't, on the top of the list as the best in the world, they're there, they're in cages. And in a lot of cases, unfortunately, people come in to adopt, and there's always that one or two that for some reason people just keep going by. And that's not, in my opinion, fair to our wonderful animals, because they didn't do this to themselves. And in some cases, it was not, they had to be taken out of a very bad situation. So, they got to have the best. Now, a morning at the sanctuary, Leela, a young volunteer from the village, was the first to arrive each day. She walked barefoot through the gate. They didn't wear shoes here because being grounded made the animals calmer, or so the founder believed. I think anything helps, and anything can make it where people and animals feel safer. And this is just another little tidbit of information or action that says, I am thinking so much of all the animals that we're taking care of that we're going to be as uncomplicated as we could be. So that kind of makes sense. Now, as she approached the dog enclosure, a small one-eyed Bali dog named Kopi wagged his tail so hard his whole body wiggled. He had been found months earlier tied to a fishing boat, sick and terrified, but here he had become the unofficial greeter. Every new animal received a sniff of approval from Kopi before settling in. I just get so, how would you say, and again, this is why I do the Animal Channel. I love animals, and, you want to try to be happy every day. And I admit, things in the last year or so have not been generally very logical, happy, friendly, and I can go on and on and on. So when you have the opportunity to talk about an animal or an animal location and people giving their time and love to animals, it just is one of the best things we have in our world. And I mean that as deeply as I can. Now, next came Naga, a giant fruit bat with a wingspan wider than a dining table. He had flown into an electric wire, God bless, years ago, but now he lived in a lush aviary where mangoes grew on low branches so he could reach them. You can see he's old, and he got injured, as stated on, hitting an electrical wire. And that's another whole issue. I'm a generator company, or was a generator company for many years. And yes, my job was to get homes and so on and so forth set so that when there was a power loss, they had power. But the biggest thing that I've got to be honest, I have a real problem with, and I know sometimes, as you know, if you listen to me, I go off on tangents, but when you see wooden electric poles and wires sitting up, obviously so you can't touch them. And we've had that situation for over 100 years. It doesn't make sense. We're better than this. We would have had opportunity. And as an example, Tesla. He developed in about 1900 the wireless electric. So you wouldn't have to have these wires up on these poles. And unfortunately, they're a hazard. Animals can be killed. They can hit them. They, in hurricanes, they fall down. Transformers blow up. I mean, it just is not great. And really, and I know people say, well, it'll be very expensive, but we could have a much, how would you say, aesthetically and functional electric system. When we have a hurricane and the poles go down, that extends beyond, a good amount of time before you're going to have power. And yeah, I did generators, so it was like, well, gee, Jim, if power was wonderful all the time, they wouldn't need generators. Well, believe it or not, even though, yes, I was in the generator business for 20 years, I guess I would have been happy sacrificing what I was doing to have it where everything was set up much better and safer. We lose, and unfortunately, electric is going up higher every day. And when you have wires that are up on a pole, and down here in South Florida, our summers are literally almost 100 degrees. So that's 100 degrees of piercing sun rays hitting the wire. And here's what happens. One, it kind of, you might say, destroys the wire over the long run. But even worse, we lose power coming down the line. So I'm going to use a stupid number. Let's say from wherever my power, for example, is coming from, it's at a scale from where it leaves, let's say, a substation. It leaves as a number one. I'm using stupid numbers. By the time it gets to me, depending on the distance, it might be, instead of 1, it could be 0.5 or half. And that means we have lost half of the electricity that's is being sent out because of the wire reduction in heat. Electrical is, in essence, electrons that are going through a wire. And if the heat goes up, it basically has it where I'm paying for, in essence, that indirectly, and I'm not getting the power as easily as it should be. If we were all underground, we'd have a much different situation. So, anyway, I know we go off on these tangents, but the heart of the sanctuary, the soul of the Whispering Palms, was its founder, Au, a gently smiling woman with a braid nearly to her waist. She believed animals weren't placed in people's lives by accident. And that's kind of another unique point, is you can make good things happen, and you can make things not be good. And we're just excited that these people say, look, yeah, we might make a little money. Yes, we have to have a living. But if you are taking care of animals every day, the animals know it, and the animals are blessed to have, in this case, her with this wonderful, freedom-oriented sanctuary. Now, the folks that are involved here, they were teachers, healers, and sometimes mirrors of our own wounds. She often said, we don't rescue them, they rescue us right back. And that is true. Au had started the sanctuary after a volcanic eruption displaced wildlife all across the region. People brought monkeys, dogs, owls, monitor lizards, even a half-blind sea turtle, hoping she could help. She never said no. And in my functional life of things that I do a lot of things, technology, networking, and so on and so forth. And there's very little that I would say, no, I can't do, or I won't do, or I won't learn to do it. I'm doing an electrical, and yes, I've done electrical, mainly because I was a generator guy. But yeah, I had to kind of learn again on one aspect of putting two separate plugs together, because I don't do it very often. But we have opportunities on YouTube and elsewhere to have it step by step to remind you what and how to do what you're looking to do. Anyway, a story of healing. Now, one day, a tourist named Samuel stumbled through the gate carrying a small crate. Inside was a trembling ginger cat with patches of missing fur. He'd been wandering through market stalls, terrible place to be, dodging scooters and hunger. And, I have no statistic to say 20% of the population in the world like animals and 80% don't. I have no statistic. But the recognition is there are a lot of situations where animals are not cared for properly, and it's not fair. It's almost, again, and this happens all the time. Let's say a family has a child and they never wanted a child. Maybe, hopefully, they'll come around to doing the right thing, or in a lot of cases, they don't. And that's exactly the same with animals. They always say, all children, young children want an animal, a cat, a dog. And, it could very well end up kind of having it where and excuse me, having it where they have the animal, they get the animal, and they don't take care of the animal. It's one of those things is don't do it if you're not going to go through the whole thing and making sure that the animal is cared for. Now, I love animals, and with Jamie being almost 11, I worry every day and the day will come when she is not able to function, and in so many words, your life would come to an end. I can't even say how I would be able to handle that. And it isn't where, because of our age, it's not where you can go out and say, well, just get another animal, another dog. Well, I'm 76, my wife is 72. And, if you got a real young dog, you'd say, well, the dog is probably going to outlive us. We've decided to kind of have best of both worlds is we're going to work at a rescue facility. So I guess you might say we have the best of both worlds. Anyway, Ayu knelt beside an open door gently and whispered, "Welcome home, little traveler." And you can see how that wonderful little kitty is saying, I appreciate everything you've done. The cat did something unexpected. He stepped forward and pressed his forehead against Ayu's palm, and Lila gasped. This could have been an animal that hadn't really opened up. Maybe it had been treated poorly, was afraid of humans. And she is seeing now, as you see, that the animal is saying, thank you, I love you, and everything going along with the wonderful care. Anyway, day by day, the ginger cat recovered. His fur grew back and his spirit returned. He slept stretched out in sunbeams, played with coconut husks, and even helped comfort new animals by curling beside them. They named him Sina, meaning sunlight. And as you saw quickly there, the kitty is laying on some, and I'm not even sure the animal, but they're little babies. And that kitty now, instead of saying, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know why I'm here, is now saying, I am so lucky to be here, and I'm going to pitch in and help. Months later, Samuel returned. He asked Ayu if Sinar could fly back home with him. Ayu smiled warmly but shook her head. Sina already chose where he belongs. And as you can see, the cat, hearing his name, trotted across the courtyard and leapt into Leela's lap, purring loudly enough to drown out the cicadas. Now, why travelers love the place, visitors often said that Whispering Palms didn't feel like a shelter. It felt like a village where humans and animals share the same air, the same rhythms, and the same healing. People came for an hour and stayed for a day. Volunteers meant to visit for a week and stay for years. And whenever the breeze rustled through the tall palms, it carried something soft and reassuring like a promise. Every creature who arrived here left better than they came, whether on 4 paws, wings, or 2 feet. So that is the whole story of the sanctuary of Whispering Pines in Bali. And, you know, I was doing presentations related to rescue in mainly the United States. And we have great places here in the United States. But I said, and this whole thing, when I do these presentations, I'm learning things I want to learn. Because I'd never before doing doing the Great Britain sanctuary, I didn't know generally how other locations in our world were taking care of animals like that are in this situation. So, I never would have guessed that they had this wonderful open facility. I don't want to even call it a facility, but an animal location that is where we would all enjoy living. So anyway, I want to thank you. I'm wishing you all the very, very best. I'm wishing you the very best holidays. And I'm looking forward to hopefully a good 2026. And, if you can subscribe, great. Appreciate it and like. The interesting thing right now about YouTube is too much of it. When I go on and when I exercise, I watch YouTube and stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But there is just too much political projects, presentations. And the sad part, in a way, a lot of it is clickbait. And I've never done this before, but I'm actually, and you can do this if you're looking at, presentation down in the lower right, there are 3 buttons. And it will bring up a little menu that says you can say what you want to do in the future. I always say, do not show this particular channel to me again. And it's only because, one, too often it's not factual, information. It's clickbait, meaning people want to have a channel where they want to just think if they do a thumbnail. And, yes, thumbnails are extremely important to help let you know what hopefully you're going to look at if you want to watch it. But too often you go into it and you're like, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with what the thumbnail is stating. And it's just a waste of time. And I don't know, if I was certainly coaching somebody on YouTube, I'd say, whatever you do, make sure your presentations are as honest, accurate as they can be. Because you're doing a disservice. You're taking time from someone where it's not what they think they're going to learn from it. So it really isn't fair to anybody. And it takes time away from, let's say my channel, an animal channel that's honest, teachable, and something that is very good to know what's going on in the world. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And please take care and be well.